Kev, I've got an email. I'm slightly concerned, I must admit. This one must have passed by me because I was when you mentioned it on the show, I honestly didn't think that this was going on. Robin Grierson has written in. Neale, just a word to the wise. I'm a bit worried about that Mullins chap you hang around with. I think sadly his family has gone feral. Perhaps being on what sounds like a ranch in the middle of nowhere for an entire summer each year has returned the Mullins clan to a state of survival of the fittest. They've become hunter-gatherers with a little too much emphasis on the hunting for my liking. I most definitely heard on last week's episode Kevin suggest the kids were being packed off to hunt cicada. I had no idea, of course, that the Grammy Award-winning Cuban singer who sang Just Another Day had actually moved to Spain. Last I checked on Wikipedia, John Cicada was in Florida and writing songs for people like Ricky Martin. Perhaps it's the fact that Cicada's written songs for people like Ricky Martin that Mullins finds so offensive and therefore feels appropriate that his kids should be dispatched off to hunt Cicada down and finish him off in a jam jar. So if you get a chance, quiz him on this, as you never know who'll be next to be captured and kept in a jam jar in the outermost forgotten reaches of España. For the moment, I demand Cicada's return to his rightful place, writing songs for 80s legends like Gloria Estefan. See, I missed that, Kev. What is going on?
Honestly, you know what? Right now, I'd quite happily catch the kids and stick them in a jar.
This is the last week of our show with you in Spain and me and Blighty again. And already you want to come home, and you still. No, I don't.
It's been good. It's just we've got some guests here right now and everything, and it's a little bit
carnage. Carnage.
Carnage is it's probably a good word. Let's just say things have changed.
It's changed,
but it's fine. It's fine. We caught I saved a beautiful chameleon.
I saw that. I know you get the Attenborough Award of the Week in the FujiCast. So anyway, let me click the FujiCast theme here.
The FujiCast.
Spanish theme for the last week, and then next week you're back in Blighty with us in the studio as per normal. I can hear the kids in the background, by the way, screaming.
Mm-hmm. Yep, screaming is the right word.
What are they doing?
Screaming. I've sent everybody down to the pool, including Grandad, Nanny, the 4 kids we've got here, Gemma. They're all down at the pool right now, and
they're not allowed up in the next half hour.
I've locked myself in the house, closed all the windows, tried to keep the sound as quiet as possible.
Yeah,
but it's
you still sound like you're in a bathroom, a Spanish bathroom.
Yeah, that's the room. This is the room I'm in. But yeah. You can, apologise for the noise.
Don't worry, no, it's all part of it. We said that while you were in Spain and I was back in the UK, that anything goes on the podcast, and they sound like they're encroaching on the house. Perhaps they're going to burst in with their jam jars. Who knows? So I did see that chameleon you caught, by the way. Yeah, as you mentioned it.
He was beautiful. Yeah. And he did. I'd never seen a chameleon in the wild before, so I saved him, pulled him out of the swimming pool.
How did you handle him? I mean, do chameleons bite? I don't know.
I don't know. I used a net, so I got him out with a net, and a net as in a pool net, not a person called a net. There's nobody here called a net. No. So the pool net pulled him out. He looked a little bit docile for a bit, then he dried out because obviously they need water as well, but not pool water with chlorine and stuff in it.
What was he doing? Just swimming around in it? He was trapped in it, was he?
No, he was under the eaves actually. I didn't notice him, and I was doing my daily routine of cleaning the pool, and I saw this little tail in the back of in my peripheral vision, this swish of a tail. And initially I thought, I wonder what that could be, a rat or something. Not that they have rats here. So I stuck my little net underneath the eave of the pool, the lip of the pool, if you like, and in plopped this chameleon and started thrashing around, obviously. So I pulled him out. We dried him out a little bit, and then he just plodded off and climbed up the fence and disappeared. And he changed colour in front of our faces.
No way! What colour?
Yeah. Well, he went from kind of the sandy grey that of the stonework that's around the pool that we put him on. And then he climbed up onto the fence and kind of changed into the colour of the trees that were behind him.
That's amazing. And you saw that before your very eyes?
Yeah, and the kids saw it as well, which was great. So,
I thought you were going to say he turned from vivid to chrome or classic chrome or something.
It's all karma, isn't it? Isn't it karma?
Yeah. Karma.
It's all karma chameleon.
Well, so questions. Let's get on with it so you can get back out to the pool. The last week of doing this with you in Spain and me here. Next week you're back in the studio and everything returns, normal for a couple of weeks. And then, of course, we're we're in Brighton. And we'll be doing the show.
A lot of people come in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did put that post up, and I can't quite... Is it 20? Is it 25? Is it 30? I'm trying to tell the venue, which I'm deciding upon at the moment, where we're going to record the podcast part of it, how many people are going. And I just don't know is the answer.
Yeah, and I actually guess there's going to be a lot of people who have not actually even been on the Facebook group, who have just heard us talk about it on the podcast, who might just turn up as well. So I suspect it could be more than we're thinking about.
Well, it's Tuesday the 10th of September, and we're meeting at 11 o'clock at the entrance to the pier, from where we intend to go and record the podcast. And that's it. That's all the details you need. If you want to hang around for the whole day, you're more than welcome. We'll no doubt go on some kind of photo walk. Hopefully it won't be raining. Then
What's rain? What's rain?
Exactly. Yeah, you won't even know what it is. And then in the evening, we'll go for a couple of beers and then a huge curry. The curry house won't know what's hit it, I'm sure. I noticed that Nick Turpin turned up a bit early, though, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He turned up, but I think he'd won on the races, so that was all good.
It was all right. I did hear from him.
Just a month early.
He is coming, and hopefully he'll be one of the guests on the podcast. If you don't know Nick's work, you should go and check out his street photography. Right, let's get straight on with questions. You're going to go first, or me?
You go first. Go
okay. On. David Hollenbach. Hi, gents. I've been greatly enjoying your podcast. Thanks so much for the time and effort you put into it. I'm not a pro wedding photographer, but when I go to weddings, I always shoot. I'd strive to stay out the way of the paid tog and to shoot images I don't generally expect they'll be making. This question's for Kevin primarily. I know that you don't do pose family shots at weddings, but you do make an effort to capture images of many, or do you make an effort to capture images of many or most or all of the family members? If so, how do you find out who they are and which ones to work to, including images of the event? I don't think you do that, though, do you? I mean, that's almost impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you work in pretty much the same style as me as well, so, the question is really apt for both of us, I guess. But personally, for me... I don't guarantee that I will take a picture of everybody. Otherwise, you just become a headshot photographer. I don't really ask for details of who's who. I kind of figure it out on the day. The people who sit at the front of the ceremony, the people on the top table, the people who are hanging around the bride and groom the most, they typically are the closest people to them in terms of family. And so I just concentrate on that, and you figure it out. It's very easy. It's very, very easy to figure it out.
I mean, you can normally tell by the front few pews in church, or if it's a civil ceremony, can't you? Who's going to be the most important people? They're the ones that are right up front.
I think a lot of people put a lot of stress on themselves with this kind of stuff, and we've said it before. It's wedding photography, not brain surgery. So it's a case of doing your best and doing what you're employed to do. So if you're employed to take lots and lots of group shots, then absolutely do all those things. If you're not employed to do those things, then, you don't have the remit really to be worrying about it.
No.
There's still a lot of hang up, I think, from the old days. I say the old days, like the 80s and 70s, where wedding photography, especially people who are kind of new to the industry, who seem to think that wedding photography has to be a certain way, even though they might want to shoot in a documentary style, or they might want to shoot in a very formal style, whatever. But they think, well, I must get a picture of the bride with her dad as they leave the house in the morning, and I must get a picture of the bride with her dad as they get out the car at the church, and I must get a picture of the bride and the dad, when they're walking down the aisle, etc., etc. And actually, you don't need to be pegged to those rules. There shouldn't be any rules. It should be about delivering the images to the style that you've been briefed to do it. And I know there's a friend of mine back in Wales who just really kind of refuses to get that. And he kind of says to me, well, it's really important that you must get all of these these very traditional shots and then do the documentary stuff. And I'm like, actually, it's not, because, if you want to do that, then fine. But it's not that important, because you're going to get the natural shots throughout the day and tell the true story of the day. The moment you start putting shackles around your ankles in terms of what you have to get, then that just adds stress to yourself, and you get yourself into a bit of a case.
With a glint in my eye and a kind of private joke between the two of us, You'll understand this when I ask you this question. What do you do when somebody does send you a list, and it's almost like the classic list that's been supplied virtue of reading something in a wedding magazine, for example? I've had them. I know you've had them. How do you? I mean, personally myself, I write back and say, look, I'll probably get all these, but some of them I may not. But if you want me to work off a spreadsheet, then my eyes won't be employed. How do you handle that?
Yeah, very similar. I had a similar thing this year, and I emailed back and said very exactly those words pretty much. I just said, look, you've employed me 18 months ago. You booked me, and you're perfectly aware of the style. And it was the typical thing. Mum of the bride had suddenly got involved at the end, and like, we need all of these pictures, and so the bride just passed them on to me. And I essentially just said to her, look, you know what? I'll do those. I'll never not do them. If you want me to do 45 group shots, I'll do them. But they won't be very good, and you will not get any of the style of pictures that you employed me for. It's entirely up to you. You decide. And then, of course, she came back and was like, no, you're absolutely right. I spoke to my mum.
Yeah. I just think guiding them back on track really is the thing to do, isn't it, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think it's a case of being, I don't know what the word is, egotistical or even demanding. Like I say, I'll never say no, but it's a case of being honest. And you don't go into a Chinese restaurant and ask for a curry, do you? Simple as that.
No. Well, I know some friends that do, actually.
Well, yeah. Actually, I went for
I want egg and chips. I don't want anything else. I want egg and chips.
I went for a Chinese meal in Italy once. Don't ask me why. It was a rugby tour, so we ended up in a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And it was literally tagliatelle with Chinese sauce on it.
But serves you right. Go on, your question, your turn.
Okay, so I've got actually quite a similar question here from Chris in Glasgow. It says, dear Kevin and Neale, thanks for a consistently wonderful photography podcast, etc., etc. I'm attending a friend's wedding in August, and the couple have asked me to take some pictures while I'm there. They have hired a professional photographer, but they know I'm a keen amateur photographer. And the way they see it, the more decent photos, the better. Usually as a wedding guest, I'll leave my camera at home, but having been asked, I'm happy to oblige. It goes without saying that I'll stay out of the way of the professionals' working environment, and my thinking is that I can make myself most useful by taking candid documentary style photos at the reception of people mingling and dancing. Now, my main concern is equipment. I'm fairly comfortable using bounce flash, but as a guest, I'd prefer to keep a low profile using only natural light. For this reason, I assume I'll be best leaving my slow zoom lenses at home and bringing only primes. I have FujiFilm 16 at 1.4, 35 f2, as well as a vintage Tucumar 55mm f1.8. Perhaps I could cover a useful range by switching between the 16 and 35. Or maybe, given that I'm only bringing one camera body, I'd better off sticking to one lens and concentrate on that focal length. If so, which one of my lenses would be the most useful? Should I rent a 35 f2 or a 1.4? Alternatively, I have a Fujifilm X70, which would be very discreet, but perhaps a little slower and restrictive. Any advice you can offer would be greatly received.
Can I just say, before you answer this question, Kev, or can I ask perhaps, how do you feel about guests with, I don't mind guests with cameras, I don't mind guests with, we've talked about this before, with iPhones, smartphones, whatever, and great, more the merrier. We live in a photographic world and very picture literate world these days, and people want to use their gadgets to take pictures, fine. But when somebody's there actually, and you look at them at the corner of your eye and think, what's your game? What are you doing? Why are you taking all these pictures? I'm just throwing this in there because I know that photographers can sometimes feel like this. It does put you slightly on edge, doesn't it?
No, not me. Honestly, no. It doesn't at all. As long as they don't get in my way, I just think, why not?
I'm not talking about feeling threatened. I'm talking about this kind of like constantly, they're in your peripheral. You're thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean...
Perhaps I'm playing devil's advocate a bit here, but I'm throwing this in because I know some photographers do feel like that.
Yeah, I know, I get it. And, it's happened. But again, it goes down to that stress level. You can choose to be stressed by things or you can choose not to. And, as long as they're not, and you're right, it happens. As long as they're not bothering me so much, then I'm more than happy for them to do it. It's the way I see it is, we live in this world. Cameras are cheaper. It's good that people are buying cameras and not, using their phones all the time. And if they're interested in photography, as I was and you were, then then, to them, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. It's not like they're getting up in the morning and thinking, right, I'm going to go and have these pictures and get in the way of the photographer and everything. They probably wake up in the morning and think, great, I've now got something I can really get my teeth into using this camera. And that's a good thing, I think. I don't think that it's necessarily a negative thing. Now, it's very different, of course, if you're setting up shots and they're shooting them over your shoulder and, that kind of thing, then I totally get that. That's definitely something that would annoy me. But because I don't really do any setting up of shots, I don't
There's not so much.
experience that. I had a wedding a couple of months ago, back in June, I think it was, and it was quite a high-end wedding. And the morning of the wedding, during bridal prep, the bride said, we know you don't do any of the, or we don't want any of the formal stuff from you. So if you don't mind, a friend of my mum's is quite a decent photographer, and she's going to bring her camera, and she might just go around taking a few headshots here and there. I was like, yeah, great, absolutely, do whatever you want. What that lady did was, every single person that entered the church, she stopped them and took a headshot of them. And it didn't bother me at all in any way, shape or form, because they were, she probably spoke to the bride. The bride's getting what she wanted. I was getting what I wanted. The lady wasn't getting in my way at all. She was very pleasant. I spoke to her, and it's just that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's weird. It's like I go to the beach here, and they have you can hire, what do you call it, peddlers. Those big yellow things with slides on the back and everything. And do those people get pissed off or annoyed when we turn up with our little inflatable dinghy? And actually, it's a duck. It's an inflatable duck. Do they get annoyed because somebody else has brought something else to the water?
That's a very good point. Yeah. I tell you what, this is the sound of me getting back in my box.
No, but I mean, point taken. I just think it's, myself included. Well, God, you know me. I put as much stress in front of me as possible, but you can just do as little stress as possible. It's a good thing.
With me back in my box, then, how do we answer this question?
Well, I mean, back to the question. Sorry, Chris in Glasgow. We tend to go off on these deviant.
We went on a journey, including talking about your duck, which is very strange.
Yeah, that's right. I would just go 35 f2. Go with what you've got. Don't bother. You're a guest. Don't bother renting things or anything like that. Just enjoy it. Go 35 f2. I think if you go 16, it's probably a little bit too wide, which means you're probably getting a bit too close, and then perhaps you will encroach on the professional photographer. Definitely don't be going over his shoulders, and do something different to what he's doing. Include him. Remember, include him in the pictures, because he's part of the day. We never get in the picture. I'm not in any pictures. Never, not family pictures, nothing.
Don't you ever find that people during the day will say, "Got one of the photographer, got ya, I've got you again." Don't you get all that?
I did have that time when I think I've talked about this, when Leona Lewis took a selfie of me on the phone, because she was a guest at the wedding and I had no idea, of course. So she took a selfie.
Yeah, you'd have no idea.
It was a Snapchat selfie, so I had some button ears or something like that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, the group said, she was so chuffed that you didn't bother her. And I was like, who? He said,
no idea who she is.
I was like, Leona who? The woman you had your photo taken with.
Unless she's a country artist, I've got no idea. Has she ever sung Galveston? Then I'd know her.
Yeah, so 35 f2, that's what I would do, and enjoy it. Remember, you're a guest as well. But, you've got the X70. So 35 f2, X70 in your back pocket, just in case you do want a little bit wider stuff. That's 18.5mm. Yeah, that's it. That's what I would do.
Perfect. Right, one more question, then we'll hear from some FujiCast friends. And I also want to talk about ex-weddings, because something has happened in the last couple of weeks. So we do need to talk about that. Hi, Kevin and Neale. My name is Joey Barr. I'm from Great Bend, Kansas, basically in the center of the States. I have listened to every episode, love the podcast, how it keeps evolving. I can't wait to see where it goes next. I remember Kevin saying something about Photo Mechanic not recognizing favorites from a Fujifilm camera. There is a way to get PM to see a selection from a camera to help speed up culling instead of favoriting a photo, protect it. Now, what I thought, there's two parts to this, Kev. I thought I'd take his suggestions here, and I'm going to post these into the Facebook group so that people can see, because it's quite a long answer, and I just thought it'd be really handy. People could see it in the Facebook group. If you're not in the FujiCast Facebook group, then you need to get in there to see Joey Barr's answer to that question. But he does have an actual question. When you're shooting a wedding or anything else in documentary nature for that matter, what do you set your shutter button speed at? I mean, do you use single image per press of the shutter button, a continuous low or continuous high? I do realise that in some situations, like a wedding exit confetti throw will require high. What's your go-to speed setting for the shutter button? Thanks for the wonderful show and the information you provide. Thank you, Joey Barr. So, what do you use, Kev?
Well, I just use back button focusing, single shots. So I'll focus once and then shoot as many times as I feel I need to. I much prefer that over continuous shooting. However, I do use continuous for things like Joey said, the confetti, walking up the aisle, that kind of stuff. And I put that in continuous high. That's it really. But other than that, it's back button focus. And, you know, the good thing about that obviously is you can, if you feel like you've got the shot in 2 pictures or 3 pictures, then, you know, the camera's not constantly taking shed loads of images, and typically you don't come back with 20,000 pictures. I think that with the mirrorless stuff, you and I are in a Facebook group, private Facebook group with some friends, and there's a photographer on there, a very good photographer, who's just switched from DSLRs to Nikon DSLRs to the Nikon whatever it's called, ZR, the mirrorless thing there.
Yeah,
and he said that he's taken so many more pictures. And the reason I think is true for all of us, not just, I include myself in this, is that because you can see through the viewfinder what you're getting, you end up shooting more because you're not chimping so much, because there's no need to chimp because you can see it in the viewfinder. And, you're watching, it's like watching a movie in front of you, and you're taking these shots when you think is appropriate, rather than, kind of that initial get the moment and kind of, wonder if you've got it or not, and then check your settings and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think mirrorless is a symptom of mirrorless is shooting a lot more. Things like continuous shooting. I mean, cripes, the XT3 if you put it in sport mode, I don't know, shoots something like 30 frames per second. Mm. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I mean, it's got its usage, of course, but I would put that down as, it's called sport mode for a reason. It's not called wedding mode. And if you're shooting 30 frames per second constantly at a wedding, you're going to end up with a lot of culling. Yeah, a lot of culling. And personally, I don't think you'll get the same artistic feel at a wedding. What
about when you're? We talked about this the other day, funnily enough, when I was doing some, in inverted commas, street photography in Croatia on my little holiday that I've had in the middle of all this, and we were talking about your shutter speed for when you're working on the street. Now your setup, probably worth just running through very quickly. How it's a sunny. Let's treat it as it's a bright day.
Yeah, it does depends a lot on the light. It depends a lot on the camera. So I think you were using the X100F. Yep. So I would be, if it's a bright sunny day, I'll probably be doing f8, ISO 200, maybe 400, pre-focusing to, whatever your comfort zone is, 2 meters, 3 meters away from you, maybe closer. When I'm in Tokyo, when it's bustling about, I'm pre-focusing or manually focusing around about half a meter away from me.
Oh, wow. So very close.
Yeah, and it just stands still. The closer you are, the more you're going to have to stand still and wait for things. But yeah, f8, f5.6, f8 on a wide-ish lens like that, 23mm, which is 35mm equivalent. On the X70, for example, of course, it's pretty much everything's going to be in focus because it's wider. And just press when you feel like it.
Yeah.
just press.
It's a system that works. I'm sure Nick Turpin may well share a little bit more of the way he works. When he, I keep saying this, he's going to be at the Brighton meetup. Hopefully he still will be, but I'm sure we'll all have a chat about that sort of stuff anyway. Right, let's meet some FujiCast friends now. We've been doing this for the last couple of weeks. This is the last week of doing this for this series of them anyway. I think it's quite a nice idea. We should do this again sometime. Thank you for joining in with this feature. We've got 4 more FujiCast friends this week where we get a chance to hear about you, what kind of photography you're into. And we'll start, I think, with Emily. Is it Emily Rainier or Renier or Renier? Or because I've seen your name so many times now, Emily, and I think we've said it so many different ways as well.
You know what? I'm happy for you to take the lead on that. Just, Renier is how I say it, but I'm happy for anyone to call me anyway.
So it sounds very, very French. Do you have a French background at all? Or
Belgian.
You're Belgian.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was You should never say that to a Belgian person. They're French.
I don't get offended. I'm quite happy about that.
Well, I always thought it was a bit like saying you're Australian. They're saying I'm from New Zealand. Thank you very much. The other way around.
So, I don't mind. I'm fine.
So a Belgian background.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Belgium or the UK?
I grew up in Belgium till the age of 15, and then I moved to the south of Spain for 5 years, and then I moved to England to do my university degree when I was 19.
And you stayed in England.
And I stayed in England. Yes, that's it.
And so tell me about your business. That's what we're trying to find out a little bit about each of the listeners that we hear from. So
whatever I answer is going to make Kevin laugh out loud, because a few months ago when he started mentoring me, I said, listen, all I'm interested in is just getting better at my craft. It doesn't matter if it turns into a business or not. I'm just, interested in the photography craft itself. And then, it's kind of evolved into a business anyway, because I've just had commissions here and there, and I've just loved the experience and the learning journey and the combination of the two. So
but that's amazing then. So this is you've organically developed a business out of not really knowing whether you're going to or not.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm in a really lucky position that, financially, I've got another job on the line, so that keeps me going, just keeps me ticking along. And yeah, I mean, it's organic process. That's the way to describe it, really.
So what do you shoot then? What's the business?
It's aspiring, because I've got a long way to go, and I'm learning still quite a lot. But I'm inspiring to be a family and wedding photojournalist. So
weddings and portraits. So the real social documentary, if you like.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, absolutely. I basically went to see Kevin at the photography show in Birmingham.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. He's not here for this bit.
I was ready to walk out because I wasn't impressed with the whole thing, and not his thing. But then I realised that he was on, and so I went, oh, that might be interesting, because it's documentary. I hadn't really heard of the style.
I get you. I thought you meant you were ready to walk out of Kevin's talk.
Oh, no, bless him. No way. So I just walked into his session, and it was completely packed. I was on the side,
yeah.
And I just listened to him, and I just, oh my God, that was it. I was in tears. I mean, I was just completely blown away by the style, and it gave me sort of validation for my photography and for how I feel towards that sort of partnership between your subject and your lens. And it just blew me away. So that was it, really.
So the start of a journey for you. It's all Kev's fault. Everything's always Kev's fault.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's all his fault.
It's all Kev's fault. Right, you probably know the score. You've been listening to this now for the last couple of weeks while we've been doing these holiday specials. Let's have a random question. Most precious shoot you've ever done? Well, that might be early days, actually, this question. But the most important shoot you've done so far, do you think? Something that may have be the sort of the launch pad, or something where you think, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know this.
Well, actually, it wasn't so long ago. I did an event shoot for a company that is really close to my heart called Chiltern Music Therapy. It's a non-for-profit. And basically, they have this kind of family day of the year where they basically invite all of their clients, so that their patients, if you like, and all of the musicians and the music therapists that work with them come in on that day. There's barbecue, there's musicians playing, there's all sorts of workshops going on, and it's an extremely powerful experience because it basically brings a whole community together. And so at that point, you're shooting, but I'm quite an emotional person. I really wear my heart on my sleeve. So it was just an emotional experience, and being able to kind of capture that and create that story of community and the impact that music therapists can have on their community was just absolutely out of this world. It really blew me away.
Amazing. And they're the sort of gigs, they're the sort of days where you take them with you forever in your photographic journey, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that's what makes you tick, really.
Yeah, 10, 15 years later, Emily, you'll still be talking about that day.
I think so, yes, I will be, yeah, definitely.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you, Emily.
You're very welcome, Neale, and thank you for asking me.
Next up, we have John Middleton. Hello, John.
Hello.
Right, where are you from? What part of the...
I'm from Liverpool.
A red or a blue?
I'm a red.
Ah, that's the right one, isn't it, at the moment?
Well, there you go. I don't sound too miserable, do I?
No, not at all. So
Yeah,
what were you like on the night of the final?
Like a massive nervous wreck.
Were you?
I actually got a notification off my Apple Watch to say, "Are you okay?" Because I was sitting still, but my heart rate was up in the upper 140s.
Oh my word!
So I had to withdraw myself from the room a little time to recover.
Question is, can they do it this year?
Champions League's nice, but I really want the league.
God, listen to you. Champions League, nice, but I'd like to have the league.
I come from the time when we used to win the league every other year.
Yeah, Joe, I remember that at school, and it was just, you expected to see Liverpool at the top every single time, didn't you?
Yeah, that's it. We used to win something every year, at least maybe two things, and it was just normal. Who
was your favourite player in that period? So are we talking 80s or are we talking late 70s?
Late 70s to early 80s.
Okay.
Is my peak.
All right.
Favourite player?
Yeah.
That's tough.
If you had a red shirt at that time, who would you have had as a... they didn't have names on the back then, did they? But if you would have had a name on the back, who would it have been?
When I was a child, my two favourite players were Steve Highway and Ray Kennedy.
So was Ray Kennedy was prior to the Souness time, wasn't he? Or was it about the same?
Ray Kennedy was 1974 to 1983.
So there was crossover?
Yeah.
Well, good luck this season. Exciting time. So what sort of photography... I'm sorry, we got rather caught on the football chat there. So for all our friends in America, do you know what? There's a huge following for LFC in America, isn't there? Huge.
Well, it's massive and it's growing, and it's growing right across the world as well. We're probably one of the most supported teams in the world.
Yeah. Right. Photos. Let's talk photos. What's your genre? What do you like photographing?
Well, it's actually linked to what we've just been talking about. I do sport and music.
Okay. Are you lucky enough to have an accreditation so you can...
I have an accreditation to a local semi-professional team. Okay. I'm actually going to photograph there tomorrow.
Right, okay.
It's called Prescott Cables.
That's a football team?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm their club photographer.
Oh, superb. So do you do all the group shots and things like that as well?
Yeah, well, I'm actually talking to the General Secretary tomorrow to do the headshots for the season.
And you said there was another sport as well?
Football's primarily my main driver. Right. However, I do enjoy doing wrestling and boxing as well.
See, that's another one of my passions. Although my passion, I don't know, do you remember this, John? The wrestling of the Big Daddy period and Giant Haystacks.
Yeah. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes. I remember Saturday afternoons, my dad would always say, it's all made up, don't you, son? It's all made up. I said, no, it's not, Dad. No, it's not.
Dickie Davis on Will
Dickie Davis, yeah. Myself and my grandmum used to sit and watch that. We were absolutely glued.
Old women all around the ring, didn't they? And they would kind of all give it loads.
I'm not sure how politically correct it was. But you just brought back a lovely memory for me. So you like photographing sport. You said one other thing as well. Sorry, because I'm still thinking about music. Okay, yeah. And what sort of bands have you photographed?
It's mostly local Liverpool bands, but there's been some mainstream ones as well, like Manic Street Preachers. Mm-hmm. I've done them. White Lies, I've done them as well.
Well, these big names.
Yeah, well, there's only a couple, but they're mostly local bands. I photographed for two local Liverpool music online magazines.
Okay, so that's a good gig. So you're in the pit. What's your chosen weapon photographically?
Well, I primarily shoot Fuji.
Okay.
In the past, it's been Canon. Still got a Canon camera. There you go. Can't let go. I tend to use the X-H1 and the X-T3, but I do have an X-T2 as well, an X-Pro 2. I've got gas.
And what do you find it's like in I know there's stage lights, but there's always going to be areas of that stage which aren't so blessed with light. How do you find the X-T3 works for you in those situations?
It's really good, especially, I've go to some clubs and there's next to no light. It's almost darkness. And so I have to take along my 56.1.2 and my 16 1.4.
56.1.2 is a tremendous bit of glass, but is it quick enough for you with what you want?
Yes, because the bands don't tend to move around very much.
Yeah.
They just tend to stand there and scream. So yeah, it's good enough for me. I tend to shoot manual anyway.
Right, okay.
Fully manual.
Fully manual. Blimey, you're a brave man then. Fully manual in the dark.
Yeah, I've been photographing for about 34 years now.
Okay. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I've been there before.
Have you ever had any dodgy moments?
I got told off by somebody last time I done it.
Did you?
Got told off by, I think, one of the crew of the band.
Why?
Because he said 3 songs only.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great. I was out the pit. I was actually in the stands away from them, and he still come running after me.
You're joking.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you mean about that 3, because they have a 3 songs. It's not always 3 songs, but it's invariably 3 songs rule, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I tend to stick to it because I want to come back again. I want to be invited back again.
Yeah, you just know that it's going to come back to haunt you, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, so look, we've got a random question for you. I'm going to run this randomizer around. Here we go. Let's see what it comes up with. Right, okay. First camera you ever owned?
A Praktica MTL5L.
Do you still have it?
No, I wish I did. But
Oh, John, you should still have that camera.
it broke on me. It totally fell
Oh,
apart.
it should be in a glass cabinet somewhere.
However, saying that, I've got one of my dad's old ones from the 50s.
Oh, right, what's that?
Hang on, I can never remember the name, but let me just grab it. Hang
Go on, grab it.
It is an Italian camera.
Okay.
It's Benici, Corol Benici,
Yeah,
a 120 film camera.
there we go. Another proper camera.
There you go, lovely. But I've still got my original Canon film camera, which was an EOS 100.
I'm glad you kept one of them. John, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with the music photography, and good luck for another top red season as well.
Tell me about it. Thanks very much.
Next, we go to Finland. Thomas, Mitakulu.
Oh, awesome. Kuuluu hyvä. Thank you.
That is about it. It doesn't go much further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done all right to do that, and I've done all right to say Thomas, but I can't pronounce your surname, and I do apologise. So help me here.
No, it's Mikkolainen is the full name.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't worry about it.
No. I do worry about it because I'm not even vaguely. I'm extremely embarrassed about the fact that the Brits are rubbish when it comes to. No. But mind you, there's not a lot of call to learn Finnish around my way, in particular. But I've got to know. I know this because you are the nation of the sauna, and I know this because I was listening to something on Joe Rogan recently who said if you talk to anybody Finnish, they have at least 3 or 4, perhaps even 5 saunas in a week. That's why they are so fit.
Yeah, I just came.
No.
Just like, actually, when you sent me the "Are you ready?" text, I just put on my clothes and now I'm in a
No, you really were in the sauna.
Like,
oh, unbelievable. So what are the health benefits then?
I guess it gets you blood running at least.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's it. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's lazy person's exercise, I'm told, because it actually raises it raises your heart rate quite considerably. And if you stay in for about half an hour, you can burn something like 300 calories, I heard. Is that true?
Maybe. I've never measured. Like, I have never thought about it. Like, it's just for fun and just for like relaxation, I guess. Yeah.
There we go. So Finland, I know nothing about the photographic industry in Finland. So you're going to have to help me here. How buoyant it is, what seem to be the genres that are working really well. Tell me about your photography and where that fits into the Finnish market.
Yeah, my photography is mostly about weddings and weddings and some business clients also here and there, but usually most weddings. I
mean, obviously everything has scale, but in terms of the wedding industry, you probably have heard us talk about this on the podcast, and you'll hear Americans and Canadians talk about this as well. That it's a very competitive field now. Is that the same in Finland?
I'm not sure if this is the right word, but like saturated. You know, like it's really vast, and there's always someone charging more and charging less, and it's kind of similar kind of struggles here. And I'd say that there's like 10 to 15 really, really, really popular and good ones here, like wedding photographers. I'm not part of them, but I'm getting up there, I guess. So yeah, what I concentrate on is really like my social skills and really kind of developing the whole customer experience and the actual photography, being a photographer, like being taken photos of, like that kind of experience. That's
really interesting because you wouldn't find many people, Thomas, saying that they're concentrating upon their social skills, that the conversion battle that way. That's interesting that you're looking at that as perhaps the primary focus of how you're going to improve your business.
Yeah, like actually, I think Kevin mentions this quite often. Actually, that there's always someone taking better photos and always someone better in general. And so why fight it in a way? Like, I know that someone's taking better pictures than me, but is the customer experience better? Maybe not.
And with regard to what you shoot with, are you a Fujifilm shooter? Because you don't have to be, but are you?
Yeah, I am.
And what are your favored bodies?
XT3 and XT2. Like, I started with XT2. I owned XT1 for a couple of months and then upgraded it XT2, and now about a year and a half later I have XT3 and XT2.
Ever been an X Pro 2 shooter at all, or X Pro 1?
No, I don't know why. I've actually just thought about it yesterday. Like, why did I even? I don't know. Like, people really are fond to their X Pro 2s here, and just the price of a new is quite steep for how old it is. But, yeah. I don't know.
Right, I've got a random. Are you ready for a random question?
Always.
So here comes our randomizer. See what it lands on. Right. Now this is a good one for you, because Finland is a beautiful country from the pictures I've seen. I'm yet to go visit. Closest I've got to you is Norway. I'm getting closer.
Yeah.
Most amazing location that you've photographed?
Oh, I don't know. Like, for foreigners, for not Finnish people, I guess the lakes, and just there's so much lakes and nature and forests. So maybe those are always a good choice to go. Do you
take it? I suppose you pass these things every day and you just take it for granted.
Yeah. Like, we've been talking this with my fellow photographers, that there's always, like, even in our, like, just the backyard, there's always like a good place to go and shoot, but you never do, because
do you have the Northern Lights as well? Are you far up for the Northern Lights?
I am actually quite south.
Quite south, so it's not going to affect you then, is it? No.
There's also like Northern Lights, but mainly in the winter time.
Yeah.
But when you go up north, there's plenty of them.
Well, Thomas, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you for making some time and joining with our little feature here, getting to know a few of the FujiCast friends and listeners. It's been great talking to you. And Finland is another one of those ones on my list, Thomas. It's there, just waiting for the tick.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. Finally, we've got Joe Jocelyn. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Good. Now, we know of you a bit because you've been quite active in the Facebook group, and we've heard from you on email and stuff. But for those that I don't know why they wouldn't know you, Joe, but for those that don't, you've got to tell us the genre you prefer, what you're doing, all about your photo business.
So my main business is documentary wedding photography. I just try and keep it as simple as I can, really.
Are you completely documentary? Have you managed to steer the business completely documentary, or are you having to do, that little, as I call it, half-hour holiday?
I tend to get away with it most of the time. I've been quite lucky and attracted the clients that actually want what I'm offering, as opposed to wanting the, as I said, hour-long portrait session, which isn't really something that I enjoy doing. I can do it, I will do it, but it's not something that I enjoy to do too much.
How have you attracted clients that understand your desire for the way you want to work?
I think it's just down to kind of, as Kevin suggested to me a long time ago, is just kind of show what you want to do. If you're going to show portraits, then people are going to want to book you for portraits.
Now, you mentioned Kevin. You're not allowed to say he's the only one that's inspired you.
No, it's just that I've known...
You've known of Kevin, yeah. What about other photographers that you follow? I remember when I started shooting weddings in the style I enjoyed, for me, I know we've mentioned his name a few times, in the UK, it was definitely Jeff Askoff. And actually Joe Busink as well from America. Yeah, I loved his approach. And I loved him as a person, actually, the way
he's very entertaining.
Yeah, he is. Have you seen Joe talk?
Yes, not in person, only on YouTube things.
Yeah, have you ever got a chance to see him talk live? I mean, man, you at the end of it, you were like, I want to be like Joe. So who's inspired you apart from apart from Kev? Anybody in the wedding industry in this country?
So when I first started, or very early on, I became quite close with a fella called Steve Wood. I don't know if you know Steve.
I do, yes. Yeah. Didn't Steve used to be in the military?
Yes, that's right. He's good friends with Giles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Steve Wood. Yes, of course I know Steve.
Yes, yeah. So I worked with him for quite a while, and we shot quite a few weddings together, and he was just there, kind of mentoring and encouraging me to keep at it, and keep doing exactly the way I'm doing it, and kind of not falter and give in to doing whatever it is anyone else wants me to do.
Now I know Steve because we used to lock antlers about Fujifilm cameras, and he'd regularly throw. Sorry, Steve, if you're listening, but he would throw his toys out the pram a bit when it came to Fujifilm. But you're a Fujifilm shooter, or are you? I'd better check that.
I am for weddings.
Yep.
When it comes to food photography, which is my second passion, I'm shooting with Nikon. And
the food photography, is that going well as a business?
It's hard work because it's kind of like starting from scratch all over again.
Yeah.
So it's in the early days, but it's doing well. I'm booking in more and more jobs and getting to explore and just really learn.
How are you marketing yourself in the food business?
It's mostly through who you know, I suppose. I started off because an old friend of mine was a head chef at a restaurant, and he said, "Oh, can you come and do some work, take some photos?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, why not?" And then it just kind of went from there. And he would recommend me to people, and then I ended up having a bit of a residency at a restaurant now in Kent that's award-winning, from the chefs to the restaurant itself.
And how are you shooting the food? Is it the actual food, or are we talking about putting Castrol GTX or whatever that stuff when you want to have caramel or whatever those other tricks are that people do?
No, it is all the genuine, the real deal.
Food can be a difficult thing to photograph because plates are reflective. Things are very sometimes it's very difficult to make it look three-dimensional without coming up, and then you can see too much of a table. And what are the tricks of your trade?
Reflectors are one of the best things that I really invested in, is having a good softbox and a reflector just to bounce back and just really understand how the light works.
And do you go into, we've talked about this before, I like going into the kitchens at weddings and photographing the chef. Do you do that as well, or is it a bit of a busman's holiday now? Oh, you do?
There's been a couple of places that I haven't done that, but no, quite a lot of the time they're quite happy for me to do that. And kind of, the whole part of that's my documentary side of me coming through. It kind of tells the story from the start to finish.
Yeah.
As I said, with the restaurant in Kent, they grow all of their own food. They've got their own pigs and chickens, etc. So you tell the story from the farm to the table. So
wow. No, that's a good deal further than just photographing in the kitchen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, let's give you one of these random questions. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
We're going to spin the wheel and see what happens here. All right. Somebody you'd like to make a portrait of. Okay, so and we'll make it a dead or alive. Well, obviously they're going to be alive, but somebody from the past is just as appropriate as an answer here.
Yeah, no, that's a really simple one for me. I'd love to photograph Michael Caine.
Why Michael?
I just think he's got such a fantastic character about him. Yeah. I think he's someone that probably doesn't need to do too much to make a great photograph.
I think he's somebody that wouldn't mind being photographed as well. You know how some celebs can be a bit, oh, you want to take me a photo? Go on then. I think he seems the kind of guy to me that would make you feel at ease.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Well, really, it should be the other way around, I know, but I think when you're dealing with someone like Michael Caine. Well, look, Joe, great to chat to you. Thank you very much for making the time, and I'm fascinated about the food business, and we should talk more about that one day. Definitely. Cheers, Joe.
See you later.
It's been great fun hearing your stories and how you work and about your business over the last 3 weeks of doing this different kind of midway interview. Back to normal next week. We'll have Kev in the studio, interview in the middle, and then Kev in the studio again with myself. So before we go to the questions, let's talk about what's happened with X Weddings, because there's been a slight change, but nothing that really should affect anybody too much.
No, it shouldn't affect anybody really, apart from me and my sanity, and Gemma's sanity, of course. So while we were here in Spain, we had well, let's backtrack a little bit. The original X Weddings conference last year was in June, and we planned to have it in June 2019. So we had it in June 2018, and we were going to have it in June 2019. And I spoke to the Hilton many, many times, and they said, well, we can't do it in June because we are going to be doing a renovation. And it's going to be a major renovation, and it will be done over the summer, and it will be completed by September. Now, so that's why we moved it to November, which is fine. And I subsequently had an email, phone call from the Hilton. And in fairness to the Hilton, they have been amazing at trying to help me resolve this problem. So I'm not portioning any blame on them whatsoever. It's to do with contractors and things like that with the construction. But the construction is not going to start until September, and it's going to go through to February, I think, 2020. So, of course, they can't host the conference. Cue me throwing my Surveythor on the floor and Gemma saying, it will be fine, it will be fine.
Well, I do remember that text I had.
Oh, man.
I think honestly, I was in a restaurant and I had this text. I said, oh.
Yeah, that's roughly what I said, but with a lot of other words around it. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, and what took a week to organise, we have now, with the help of the Hilton and with the help of the Apex Hotel, which is a brand new hotel in the centre of Bath, and probably much nicer, got a lovely swimming pool, and it's more central, etc. The conference will now be at the Apex Hotel, right in the centre of Bath. It's still in Bath. There's no real change for anybody. There's no change to the schedule or anything like that. Just a slightly different location, 2 minutes down the road. And I'll be balder than usual and a little more stressed. But yeah, all good. And so that's the main thing. That's the main thing that we've changed. We've changed location, but it's all good. And I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, we've only got about 10 tickets left now for the keynote day.
Only 10?
So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, thereabouts. So there is options for increasing it at the Apex, but, like I said, we've got a target, and 10 is getting down. We're clicking through. So like I said, I think it's something like 81 days to go. But if you are planning on coming, I honestly recommend you don't leave it too late. Appreciate that, it's you've got organised accommodation and various things like that. If you are not local, we've still got a couple of tickets left for Wojta on his workshop on the 14th, and we still have a handful of tickets for your workshop on the 14th as well. But yeah, it's good. I'm really looking forward to it. We've got Fujifilm UK are coming, and they told me yesterday or this week sometime that they are going to be doing a hire a camera loan scheme there, which means that you'll be able to turn up and hire something from Hire a Camera for 2 weeks from there, basically, and kind of have the gear for 2 weeks, and via the Hire a Camera scheme. I have no idea in terms of pricing or anything like that, but Hire a Camera, I hire all my stuff through Hire a Camera.
Yeah, me too.
And Fujifilm are an official kind of partner with them. So if you want to get your hands on any new gear that might be around that time, you never know what's happening, then that might be your opportunity. And they're going to be there. They'll be there with a full product stock. London Camera Exchange are going to be there as well, even though they're based in Bath. They're called London Camera Exchange. So if you want to buy something, there will be cameras there for sale. We're also hoping to have Jorgensen albums there with a full set of albums and various other things. X-Rite Photo have thrown in a couple of prizes for us to give away. I'm hoping to get some stuff from Alien Skin as well, maybe some free versions of their software, and they promised me a whole load of t-shirts, very American, so hopefully they'll come through, and various other bits and pieces, the goodie bag, and most importantly, the speakers. I've just looked at the Apex Hotel, looks amazing. So it does, doesn't it? I might not actually come to the conference because they've got a hot tub. There we go. Well, when I hold the conference in the hot tub. Yeah, and I'm actually quite serious about that. You can treat that as the end of your holiday. Where's Kev? Yeah. He's in the hot tub with Lee Glasgow. He's always in the hot tub. Oh yeah, Lee. Yeah, actually, I won't get in the hot tub then. Right, you've got a question. I've got one from Ben Gillett. I'm not sure if it's Gillet or Gillet. It might even be Gilet. Who knows? Anyway,
we'll go with Gilet because that sounds very
He's
exotic.
actually going to be at the conference. He's going to be doing some filming for us.
Yes, Ben Gilet.
Let's go with Ben Gilet. Yes. Hi guys. Kevin has mentioned in passing that certain focal lengths allowed for better layering of the image. Perhaps you could both expand on this a bit and to describe your style and possible through links to specific images. What is meant by layering? Is it just having foreground and background composed around a subject? How do certain focal lengths add this, which are good for this, etc., etc.?
I was using the X100F on my week and a bit in Croatia, and I was playing around with a layering concept with the X100 because usually I guess when it comes to layering and putting stuff in foreground and background, I mean, I always love the way York Studios do it. I mean, they are gifted in the layering department. And I was doing the same kind of thing with the X100F, where I'd purposely have somebody in the foreground who was really quite interesting, maybe doing something interesting as well. But actually the focus of the shot being what's behind them. And I don't mean a long way behind them, just a little bit behind them. And I quite like working with layering that way. And that's particularly good when you're working at weddings because, of course, there's so much going on all the time. For me, layering tends to be something that's either mid or background being in focus because you're trying to create the layer. And if your eye is initially drawn right to the foreground, I'm not sure that layering process works as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right. York Place do that amazingly well. Dom and Liam, layering can be multiple things. I think in my mind, the way that they do it and the way that you do it as well. I've seen it in your work, and the way that I do it to a certain extent is just like that. You have maybe a larger element at the front that's kind of out of focus. You might be shooting at f5.6 or something. And then your main kind of story, if you like, is in the background. However, what I would say about kind of real, proper technical layering, if you like, is maybe something like f8. Like we said, just imagine you're in Croatia still. Did I mention I'm still in Spain? And you're trying to get at a wider aperture. You're trying to get as much information into the scene as possible. And where this becomes really tricky for me, and where you can really understand a good picture, if you read a good picture, is they take into account the edges of the frame. And the edges of the frame are something that most people ignore. It's mostly about, right, it's a snapshot. I need to get that main thing in focus and in the middle, or whatever it is, and actually don't think about the edges. Now, one of the challenges I give people on my street photography workshops is to shoot at a wide aperture like f8 and go and get a series of images where there's no overlap of any subject. So let's just say 5 people, got to be 5 people, and they're not overlapping in any way, shape or form in the frame. So they can be 10 feet behind each other, in front of each other, etc., but there's no overlap, and that includes having broken edges. So if anything is a tree or a car or something is breaking through the boundary of the border, the edge of the frame, then that's going to break up the composition. And you can look at, especially if you look at the Magnum website, a lot of people look at the Magnum pictures and naively will say, anybody can take a picture like that. But actually, if you read that picture and you look at the edges especially, you'll see that there's been a lot of thought into the structure of the picture before the button has been pressed. And again, going back to this overshooting thing that we're all guilty of, I think that a lot of us think less of that than we should do. A good picture, a good layered picture is edge to edge, front to back, and what happens inside has to be a good story, and then you've got a layered picture.
This one's from Steve from New Zealand. Steve from New Zealand. I would have had your surname had I remembered to print it here, so apologies. Hi guys, Steve from New Zealand here. There must be more Steves there, I'm sure. Love the podcast. Recently attended one of Kev's photo walks in Bristol. Did he come from New Zealand? Do you remember that, Steve?
Yeah, there was a Kiwi there, but I thought he was. Yeah, no, I think he was travelling at the time. Yeah,
oh, right, okay. Yeah. My question is, how do you go about putting a walk together? What, for you, is the ideal number of attendees? And if you could put together a walk anywhere in the world, where would it be? We'll come back to that one. Certainly putting a walk together. See, I thought about this a little bit for Brighton because I was thinking if there's 30, it might be a bit unwieldy. Would you put it in 2 groups or 3 groups? Now, you do this a lot because you do street workshops, so you know how to do this, Kev. What's your suggestion?
Well, I think the difference between a workshop and a photo walk is that literally a photo walk is, a social exercise with friends, wandering around, taking pictures, chatting, asking questions, etc. Whereas a workshop is very much based on, or certainly my workshops are very much based on exercises and education. So I don't have more than 5 people on my workshops. I think when Fujifilm UK organise them, they have 10 people. But my personal workshops are no more than 5 people, and that works much better for me from an educational point of view. And I think for the attendees as well, it's much better for them. But a photo walk in the traditional sense is literally a handful of people just kind of with an interest getting together. Social side to it, and off you go.
I guess this is what we did when we went walking with Patrick and Facundo in Brighton last year. I mean, that was a photo walk, wasn't it? We kind of meandered.
And what did we do? We went to Brighton. We went for a walk.
Yeah,
we had fish and chips, and then we went back to Malmesbury and had a curry.
That's it. Perfect day.
Yeah.
Perfect
There's
day.
There's a theme approaching it.
Yeah.
But that when we were in Brighton that time, that definitely was the thing that sowed the seed, wasn't it? Because I remember saying to you that day, "Oh, we should come here." We were just thinking the 2 of us at the time, and shoot.
Well, we didn't have a podcast at that point, did we?
We didn't have a podcast, so at that point it was just an idea for the 2 of us.
Yeah.
And now, of course, Brighton's a great place. It's an amazing place. There's a lot to see, a lot to do, and I think what we'll probably do for the Brighton photo walk is give people a rough route that we'll probably take. And we'll say that at X o'clock we will aim to meet here. If people get lost or decide, some people may want to go and buy. Steve Vaughan, he's going to be in the vinyl record shops all day long, isn't he? He's not interested in coming to talk to us. Other people might be more interested in, if there's a break-off group that want to go and do some Martin Parr down the beach, then so be it. And we'll catch up and we'll just have fun.
So with Steve from New Zealand's question here, how do you go putting a walk together? That's kind of it, isn't it, really? But I guess also, Steve, maybe if you have a Facebook group, just put the idea out there that you want to meet up at X, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as you've got access to people who are interested in similar things, and then you'll get people there. Obviously, days, times, weather, all that kind of stuff makes a big difference. Now that Wales are number 1 in the world rugby and New Zealand are no longer number 1 in the world rugby, then perhaps you want to leave the rugby element out of the walk.
Stop it. What's the ideal number of people, a number of attendees? What do you think?
On a photo walk, honestly, I think it didn't.
Sean Tucker actually has quite large numbers when he does his photo walks.
Sean does them, but I was thinking more about who's the Lightroom guy? Scott Kelby. He organised those worldwide photo walks, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And they were huge. Like every city had one, and they were huge. I think Michael Shilling organised the London one, and they were like 600 people turn up. But you do have to be a little bit careful, because if you have a large gathering of people, then you have to talk to the council and various things like that. And so I'm sure it'd be fine. I reckon we'll end up with somewhere between 20 and 200 people.
If you could put together, to Steve's last point of this, if you could put together a walk anywhere in the world, where would it be? I'm going to go a bit obvious with this, and because I really like New York and I like Manhattan, I'd choose there. Sydney would definitely be a place. I'd choose a photo walk on one of the islands in the harbour.
I think probably for me Tokyo, but again only because it's somewhere that I've been a few times and I love it, and it's different to places I see all the time.
Yeah.
But we went to Granada while we were here, and Granada's a beautiful place, really, really small, but everything is there, very old, very. You have the Alhambra castle there, and it's very Moroccan, and it's an amazing place. That'd be a cool place to walk.
So, last question then.
Okay, I've got one from Peter Johnson. He says, "Hi Neil and Kevin. Not sure if this has been brought up before, and actually I think it has, but it's a worthwhile subject to chat about. But do either of you suffer from anxiety before a wedding, the day before, the week before, leading up to the wedding day? How do you cope, and what advice can you give to put those nerves and anxieties aside? Thanks for help and keep up the good work." So we have talked about that.
We have, yeah,
a few
and
times.
recently as well. I remember Jeff Askoff talking about this on one of his workshops, and being very surprised that somebody as lauded as that John Cicada just walked into the room.
Oh, that's Brian.
Brian, okay, Brian Cicada. Right? Where were we? Yeah, I always thought it was amazing when Jeff was quite honest. Jeff Askoff, and he is a forefather of documentary wedding work, certainly in the UK. That he said he suffered from not so much a certain amount of anxiety, and he couldn't actually start. He just had to press that shutter button once, and he was away. And then the anxiety was gone. Then all those feelings of, will I get it? Will I not? Will there be enough pictures here today for me to grab? Will there be enough moments? And it was that one shutter moment. And I feel a very similar sense that when you turn up, sometimes you're in that, not quite, for me, imposter syndrome, because I don't suffer so much from this. But I know a lot of people do suffer from the, am I going to be good enough? Who am I kidding? Maybe one day I'll be found out. Maybe it's just my best shots on the website. They're the only things they like. But then when you press that first shutter button, it's like, whew, now we can just relax and get on with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for me, it's the same. For me, my biggest anxiety is that I've got the right day and time and place. And so when I ring on the doorbell in the morning and I see somebody with, their hair in curlers, I think, yeah, this looks like a wedding.
Travel anxieties are a very real thing. I'm
at a wedding a good 2-3 hours early, mostly.
Yeah, I know you are. Often when you're working in London, you're able to go for a sit down meal before you start.
Yeah. I'm terrible for it. Terrible.
Well, thank you for your question and all your other questions. Next week, Kev is back in the studio, so you're going to be here, just sat opposite me. Yeah, I look forward to seeing your smiley face all over again, Kev. Are you looking?
Start of the month. It'll be the start of the month, so I'll have some spare smiles.
Well, yeah, don't use them all up though, because we need some for the Brighton do. Right, we got some payouts. I'll do mine first because you've actually got one. You've been at work, so let me do. I'm going to use Thomas for mine.
My dad's Instagram is Neale James. See his films on YouTube at Neale James Photo. His website is neiljames.com for pictures and one-to-one mentoring. And you can hear his other photography podcast, which is called Breathe Pictures, wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, and don't forget his name is spelled Neale.
Now, Kev, you mentioned Granada. That's where you got your guest one, isn't it?
I have, yeah.
So tell me about them. Before I press the button, tell me about them.
Well, it's a woman. Her name is Clara, I think.
Oh, right.
That's it. That's all I know, really. I just stopped.
Is she Spanish, Clara? Is that Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Clara. Yeah, I think that's Spanish for Claire.
Here's Spanish Clara.
Hola, me llamo Clara. Estoy aquí en Granada con Kevin y su preciosa familia. Y no sé quién es, pero me ha dicho que tengo que decir que Kevin Mullins photography.co.uk. Hasta luego.
So see you in Blighty next week, Kev. Have a safe flight home, and don't forget, make sure that with 10 tickets to go on X Weddings that you're a part of that action.
Absolutely. See you. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Go grab that beer.